Hi. The truth is, I'm so tired of talking about gender in relation to fashion. Not because fashion isn't worth talking about, we wouldn't be here if it weren't, but contrary to what some folks in the previous panel were saying, I do not think gender is fertile ground for a discussion. No, I do not think fashion is fertile ground for a discussion of gender. Because when we talk about gender, generally speaking, we're talking about the gender binary. We're talking about two options, male and female, dead end, one way street, nothing at the end of it. But we're also talking about the myriad visual signifiers that accompany male and female, like what we see on a bathroom, the guy in the suit, the girl in the dress. And when you're talking about this rigid binary to begin with, and then start talking about it in the context of objects, you're sublimating something that is so limited to begin with and making it even more limited. So I kind of want to chart a very brief history of quote unquote subversive gendery fashion imagery. All of these sort of images and genres we get in fashion that are supposedly subversive to gender and the gender binary, but I hope to outline that they really just reinforce it. This is a photo, very iconic photo by Helmut Newton, French Vogue, 1975, of a female model in the infamous YSL Yves Saint Laurent Le Smoking suit from fall 1966. This image is shoved in my face on every shoot I have ever done. I'm a trans model, so my embodiment in fashion to many folks is inherently subversive. There's my femininity of my identity and the masculinity of the assigned gender at birth. Whether that's true or not is another discussion for another day. But, this is kind of what people want to see me do a lot of the time. But I look at this image, and the discourse around this image is that a woman, gains this power, this sort of dominance, this sexiness from donning a man's suit. But if she is sourcing this new sense of power and sexiness, this decadence, the cigarette, if she's sourcing that from a signifier of stereotypical masculinity, then how sustainable is that as a power source? If she's just putting it on and taking it off, is that really a subversion of gender boundaries, or is it just a reinforcement of the binary as we know it? A reversal. A 1992 photo by Paolo Reversi of Jean-Paul Gaultier's muse Tanel Beldrosson. He's wearing a dress from the 1984 Barbet collection, fall 1984 of Jean-Paul Gaultier. The discourse around this image is a man assuming the sensuality and vulnerability of a woman, in this soft blue Paolo Reversi lighting by wearing a dress. I became acquainted with this image. It was in that Jean-Paul Gaultier exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum a couple years ago. Again, you have the cigarette, the symbol of decadence, of, boundaries sort of slipping away. But again, if Tanel is sourcing this sensuality, vulnerability from a dress, from a signifier of womanhood, what is the source? It's just the other side of a gender binary. And I don't really see his escape from it. I see a pose in a garment that he's going to take off, and he's still going to be Tanel at the end. Radharani, fall 2010. Unisex fashion. We're operating outside of the gender binary. And operating outside of the gender binary means kind of black, masculine tailoring, shapeless silhouettes. Everybody's wearing heels. Everyone's kind of pale, and they're not wearing makeup, and their hair slicked back, and there's nothing. I see this as a response to the gender binary in fashion that is at its core innocent and cool and I guess, productive in a certain way, but I see an erasure of the person. I see an erasure of the body. I see an erasure of identity regardless of gender. I see something that exists in a vacuum that doesn't really take an individual into account. It's kind of anti-person, and I feel like it just exists in relation to this binary, but erases so much in the process. I want to end with a personal story. I know it's like a picture of me. It's like weird to talk about that in a presentation, but this was the first time I ever walked a fashion show. It was Hood by Air, spring 2015, I think. This was very shortly after I began hormone replacement therapy, and Shane asked me to walk the show, like, in the basement of a club at 4 a.m. He's like, I really want to show people that, like, trans girls are, like, out here running shit. And I was like, cool. But, this was a point in my life where I didn't really look super feminine and my body wasn't super feminine. And I was, I understood that I had, masculine elements of me, quote unquote, and feminine elements to me, quote unquote. But I really wasn't comfortable exploring all of those different aspects of my gender identity because I wanted people to see me as a woman so much. And the original plan was that I was going to walk the runway topless with just a harness, and like my budding breasts would be out, and it would be this like big subversive thing. But they ended up putting me in this hyper kind of masculine look, like a white button-up and slacks and this shapeless vest and boots. I kind of look like Frodo Baggins. But when I watched the I felt that insecurity, and I just walked out on the runway, and I watched the video later. I watched my body in motion. I watched kind of the performance that I was giving. And I looked like Frodo Baggins, but I was walking like Naomi Campbell. And it was this moment for me where I sort of realized that all of my hang-ups about gender that I was sort of projecting onto clothes, like hoping that they would communicate something about me, it didn't really cut it. And I wasn't really able to make sense of myself as like a gendered person until I saw myself in the clothes, a person, moving, acting, being. So I guess what I'm trying to move towards is that clothes are just going to sell you short at the end of the day. And if we're trying to find a way out of this binary, I think it's more about looking at people in the clothes and what they're doing, a gesture, a personality, in action, versus trying to figure out the way out of the gender binary through clothes just for clothes' sake. This experience kind of allowed me to recognize something about myself. And it wasn't really until I gave it up with the whole clothes thing and just got down with what my body was doing in them. Thank you. This is other stuff that I was going to show, but I don't have time. Okay.